Ron Paul is now leading in Iowa, 23-20. He is now second place in New Hampshire. He is rising. Tide looks really strong, so it has sent the panic throughout the establishment. In fact, Politico has an article titled "Paul Panic Seizes Iowa Establishment." And the quotes inside the article are so damning for what the establishment thinks of outsiders like Ron Paul, who want to actually overturn their apple cart. So they talk to one Republican after another. And look at these quotes. Here's Becky Beach, a longtime Iowa Republican who helped President George H.W. Bush and George W. Bush. She says, "It would make the caucuses mostly irrelevant, if not entirely irrelevant, if Paul wins." She continues, "It would have a very damaging effect because I don't think he could be elected president, and both Iowa and national Republicans wouldn't think he represents the will of the voters." So not only does the Iowa caucus become irrelevant if Ron Paul wins, but she says that if he wins, it doesn't even represent the feelings of the real Iowa voters, let alone the national voters. But wait a minute, how can it not represent the feelings of the Iowa voters if they just voted and he came in number one? The establishment is so deathly afraid of Ron Paul that any time that he has got any advantage, they look to minimize it and obliterate it. First, when he was coming in third in some of these polls, they're like, "Oh, he's just a fringe guy. He comes in third. He's not going to make anything of it." Second, "Oh, it doesn't count. It's Ron Paul. He's got a lot of active supporters on the ground." When Obama had a lot of active supporters on the ground, they were like, "Look at Obama. Here comes Obama." Ron Paul, irrelevant, okay? And look, I tell you this 100 times over. I totally disagree with Ron Paul on at least half of his issues. On Social Security, on the income tax, on getting rid of the Department of Education. I don't agree with them. But this isn't right. You tell a guy that even if he wins, even if he comes in number one, not only is it not count, not only is it the all-important Iowa caucus become irrelevant, but that the voters who just voted didn't mean it. It's absurd, but it goes on. It's not just one person. Here's House Speaker Craig Paulson. "I don't think any candidate perverting the process in that fashion helps the caucuses in any way," referring to Ron Paul's fervent supporters on the ground. But that's what the whole caucus is about. People who are fervent about a candidate who show up at the caucuses. We've only been doing this for decades. Everybody knows that's what a caucus is. Anytime anybody else wins, they go, "Oh, look at that. They've got real momentum." They excite people on the ground. The whole reason Obama won the primary was because he did so well in Iowa. And the national press made a huge stink out of it. And I think they were right to. Now when Ron Paul's about to win, no. It's perverting the process to actually win the caucus. These quotes are mind-blowing. So Politico summarizes, by the way, what is the new short version of what the Republicans plan to do if Ron Paul wins? Ignore him anyway. If he was losing, they ignore him. If he's winning, they ignore him. Just don't, whatever you do, do not vote for Ron Paul, because he's not interested in the same corrupt politics that has been going on in Washington forever. That's why the establishment's in a panic, because he's about to take away their money for their bread money. They're like, "Well, we make all of our money being corrupt. Ron Paul won't let us do it." So here's Governor Terry Branstad, the governor of Iowa. Quote, "People are going to look at who comes in second and who comes in third. Oh, for Christ's sake." He continues, "If Mitt Romney comes in a strong second, it definitely helps him going into New Hampshire and the other states." So now, when Ron Paul was coming in second or third, being second or third was irrelevant. If Ron Paul is first, no, then what's relevant is coming second or third. But this is a joke. I mean, I've never seen a joke this grotesque. I mean, this comical. Who can possibly say who wins is irrelevant? The most important thing is who comes in third. These people they're scared to death of Ron Paul. Finally, like in the 19th paragraph of this Politico article, I finally see a quote that says, "Dr. Paul is hands down the most authentic, principled candidate in the race." I'm like, oh, finally, good. Who said it? Paul's campaign chairman, Jesse Benton. Outside of Paul's campaign, there is not one positive thing said about the leading candidate in Iowa from the entire party, okay? When they asked Doug Gross, a leading Republican lawyer and Branstad advisor, how severe a wound it would be if Paul won, he said it would be, quote, "a mortal wound." Look at how much the establishment is scared to death of Ron Paul. They're like, oh, damn, the doctor is coming. And he's going to overturn our apple cart and say, no, 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 you don't get to take money anymore and just do the bidding of your donors. And reading these quotes makes me want to campaign for Ron Paul. And I totally, fervently, adamantly disagree with him on probably more than 50% of his issues. Here's another one. They're not done yet. I love this one. Sam Clovis. He's a local talk show host. He says, I think a Paul win would be devastating for the state of Iowa and the caucus process. Now, are you ready for who Clovis is supporting instead? Rick Santorum. Now, you get that? Rick Santorum's chances of winning the overall national candidacy for the Republicans is far lower than Ron Paul's. So if their excuse was, oh no, Ron Paul can't win the overall national race for the Republicans, that's why we think it would hurt the Iowa caucuses and make them irrelevant if he won the Iowa caucus, well then how can you possibly say that if Rick Santorum wins it'll be better? No, it would be worse under that logic, because it isn't about Ron Paul's effect on the Iowa caucuses. It's about his effect on this endemic corruption that they're all hooked on. They're like, no, 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 don't take the IV drip off, Dr. Paul. Don't do it. We're hooked on that money that we get because we're all corrupt, sellout politicians. Rick Santorum, he'll keep it going. Rick Perry, Mitt Romney, all those other guys, who cares? They'll keep it going. Don't do it to us, doctor. Why are you winning? Why are you perverting the process by winning? Finally, conservative activist Tamara Scott. Now, she's Bachman's state co-chair, right? So she's got a horse in this race. But nonetheless, another quote just like the others that gives you a perfect sense of this. To see the process hijacked would be a concern for those who consider the honor we have of being first in the nation. So when Michelle Bachmann was leading the polls in Iowa, it was the greatest thing in the world, and of course she deserved it. But if Ron Paul wins, he has hijacked the process. I'm still not quite there, but the more I read this stuff, the more I think, hey, you know what? Maybe it's time to take our chances with Dr. Ron Paul. Because if the establishment is this deathly afraid of him, he certainly must be doing something right.